vaccines and testing as we make our way through the pandemic. All of that coming up this week ahead. Hey everyone, welcome in. Thanks for joining me on This Week Ahead. You could probably track it back all the way to ancient Rome. Traffic as a staple to human small talk. It's right up there with the weather. It's because it's both generic and specific, and it impacts nearly all of us. We all can default to traffic as a conversation starter, and if I'm looking for a social media post that gets a little bit more engagement, I know I can always go to that traffic well. If I asked you to name one intersection that you want to change, I bet you can do it without thinking. Adjust the timing here, add a protected turn signal there. There are always ways we can improve the way traffic flows. In fact, we know about most of those ways already. But here's the thing, traffic engineering is a little different than other system-based issues. It's a fusion of science and art. Traffic flow is all about trade-offs. A longer green light here means a longer red light there. And adjustments always need to be made. A new business opens and more traffic is likely to follow behind. But how much more? Do we need a stop sign? Do we need traffic signals? What about a roundabout? It's all part of those trade-offs. We have a traffic department that is constantly monitoring, crunching data, collecting traffic counts, and trying to make travel efficient and safer for the public. Right now, it takes a while. We have 49 signaled intersections. Some of those signals are antiquated. In fact, we have to ask other communities for spare parts for maintenance. Updating the physical infrastructure has become more of a priority, but it does take time. Updating our software has also become a priority, but it takes time. Improving your traffic takes time, just like everything that we do. We'll continue to work to cut into your small talk about traffic, but it will take a while. After all, Rome wasn't built in a day. All right, so how long will it take to perfect your travel experience across the Magic City?
Well, oh, man.
That's a loaded question. So I want to bring in our traffic engineer, Stefan Jers. He's been with the city of Minot for, has it been 3 years, Stefan?
Coming up on 2.5.
Okay, I should have done my research on this one. Bang up start for us. I should have done my research. Stefan has been with us for 2.5 years and has been working to update our traffic system since. Stefan, welcome and good morning.
Thank you, Derek. Good morning to you as well.
All right, I want to set the stage by talking about our traffic infrastructure. I made a mention that we have signals that are, in some cases, so old that we can't really buy manufacturer replacement parts. We've actually had to ask other communities for pieces for our traffic systems. Why? Can you give us a glimpse into what our traffic systems are like, and why does that older equipment impact us?
So really, in Minot, we kind of have a good mix of old and new. The city council has invested a lot in the past few years to kind of upgrade our system, kind of bring us into the 21st century. But we have a lot of that stuff that is old. You mentioned the old equipment we have from other cities. Some of the stuff like by Jim Hill Middle School, that actually came from Bismarck's scrap pile. That's how old that stuff is. So we're kind of dealing with that and kind of mixing together. It's really hard to communicate with something that's, basically digital and then something that's kind of analog, kind of runs by itself. So that mixing and mashing makes it really hard. So we're trying to work through that. It's kind of a constant battle. We're picking and choosing where we can upgrade so we can kind of blend that system all together.
So that sort of begs the question, Stefan. What are we doing to, improve that or make smoother, smarter traffic across the city?
So kind of several answers to that question. From one standpoint, we are invested in the infrastructure. There was a 2012 inspection report that was done on a lot of signals throughout town that found several deficiencies. We got weldings that are going. We got cracks in signal mast arms, stuff along that lines that we're kind of working through um, every year to replace a few of those. And with that too, we're also improving the controller that allows us to actually connect to it and talk to it. And then we're also upgrading left turn phasing. That'll probably be discussed later, I'm sure. Um, so we can actually get some protected left turns. One thing I often hear around Minot is I can't turn left. It's hard to turn left. So we are including those improvements with anything that we do. And then we're also upgrading what's called detection. We do have video cameras throughout town. Those are cameras that you see on the top of mast arms. They are strictly used for detection and not spying on you guys. We're not being Big Brother. They're basically to tell if there's a car there or not. And then if there's no car, then we can skip a phase. Or if there's a car coming, we can kind of keep it going on for a little longer. So that's what the camera's there for. So that's the kind of improvements we've been doing. Kind of the end goal, Derek, with some of that stuff. We have the hard infrastructure that we need to make it last. It's got to be able to work. It's got to be able to function. But we're also doing some of those soft improvements as well. And that kind of goes with the new controller that allows us to actually talk to it. And then one thing we're doing on the side is we're actually kind of updating the city's signal timing as a whole. So we kind of ripped off the Band-Aid. We're kind of starting from square one with that process where we're working through with the DOT on this. We're upgrading the reds and yellows that you see. Normal signal, it's green, yellow, and red. We're updating the yellows and reds for all that. And then we're also putting into a big model so that we can have people hit more greens as they go throughout town versus hitting a red at every other signal. I mean, I drive it. I live in Minot. I drive in Minot. I hit reds like crazy. So one thing with these signal improvements is the goal of, be a little smarter. Let's get people coordinated and moving throughout town.
What's that process like to try to figure out that coordination? I imagine it can't be just simply turning a finger dial to 8 to 9, right? What's the math? What's the science? What's the art behind trying to fine tune everything to try to find that balance?
So I think art is the perfect word for that. I'm an engineer by school, engineer by trade. The nice part is I do have some engineer with me when I do that. I mean, the yellows and reds, we have traffic volumes. Those are hard numbers that I can at least fall back on. But the art is how do you get all that to work together? We have intersections like Burdick and Broadway that there's a lot going on right there. So how can we, kind of mesh that so it works with Broadway, so it works with Burdick? And really there is no one correct answer. Who's to say northbound gets 40 seconds versus 50 seconds versus 20 seconds? And that's kind of how you play with that intersection and how it kind of bounces back, the ripple effect with that. So the art is with that a lot. We run the models. I play with it, move stuff here and there, see how it works together with that.
Now you mentioned Broadway. I want to continue on with that conversation because we just we started or we're in the process of sort of a Broadway corridor study right now.
Yeah.
It's a major lift from what I understand, right? What is this study? What are we doing, and what's the current status of this? What's sort of the end goal of that study?
So, I mean, Broadway, you kind of think of Broadway or the transportation background of Minot. Broadway is the road. Broadway is the backbone of Minot's whole transportation network. So the Broadway corridor study is really looking at the corridor as a whole. We're literally going from the northern city limits, which is a little north of the bypass, all the way to the southern city limits, which is by Walmart, south of 37th there. So there's a lot of things in play with that study. The kind of immediate impact we're looking for is we need a game plan to reconstruct South Broadway. South Broadway, between 20th Avenue Southwest and then going south to past 37th Avenue. That is due for a major reconstruction. The general plan right now is to urbanize that. So we kind of need a game plan of what we're going to build so we can program that in with the state. As far as that one specifically, there are some major obstacles there. The biggest one is, or I shouldn't say the biggest, one of the biggest ones is how do we get pedestrians across the highway? Currently, the only protected crossing you could say is at 16th Street, which is about a mile to the west. So we're kind of looking at options right now of how do we incorporate that crossing from basically 20th Avenue down to 31st Avenue. And then with that, expanding on it, north of there, we're also kind of trying to get a game plan for, what do we do with the rest of the corridor? Do we leave it as is? Is there areas we can improve? Is there minor improvements that we could do right away? Is there reconstructions for later on that we can kind of get that game plan again, so to speak, of improvements and how we can phase that in, either with big projects or small projects.
And ultimately, after we finish that study, however long that's going to take, then we'll start planning on scope of projects, how massive those have to be, so on and so forth. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Yeah.
The time frame right now we're looking at. I mean, things get pushed back with this COVID being virtually. It does make things a little more difficult. But the study should be complete this summer sometime.
So, looking back at traffic, sort of holistically across the city, how do you, as the traffic engineer, determine where traffic control goes? What is it that you look for in sort of determining how to control the traffic and the flow of our traffic?
So as far as where it goes, the biggest thing with that is traffic volume. There's the DOT and really the city Minot as well, really kind of cracking down on what traffic control is and where it is, how impeding it is. You try to leave traffic as free flowing as possible. So you really, your traffic signals are at your main roadways. If it doesn't need to be there, let's try not to put it there. Is there a different solution that could go there? Kind of like on the roundabout at 31st and 13th. Traffic signal wasn't really the best solution there, where a roundabout was. So we kind of have that flexibility or that art that we use with that to kind of see how traffic goes where and how that all works together.
So tell me about the sort of things that you look for. One example, we talked about this before we started our whole conversation here, is like at 3rd Street and 4th, 5th, when we opened up that intersection with the signaled intersection, you who made a sort of a demand to eliminate some trees, sort of reluctantly. How often do you have to look at just like the surroundings, and what sort of things are you kind of looking for when you make those determinations?
Yeah, so that was not my favorite call to make. As an engineer, sometimes we get called out for open skies, no trees. I live here. Again, I live here. I like trees. I like green. So that one was a little hard to make, but we look at sight distance for all cases, whether it's intersection sight distance, approach sight distance, stopping side. There's a whole list of criteria. Again, the technical side.
Mm-hmm.
But as that signal was going up, I was driving it east, west, north, south. Well, I come down the hill from the airport there, going on 3rd Street, going to downtown, and you really can't see the light. Those branches of those trees are going out so far. And I was like, man, if I can't see this, if I know what's going on and can't see this, this is just a rear end waiting to happen. So we made the call to take down those trees to improve safety. That's the ultimate end goal, the end reason why we did it, is to improve safety.
Yeah, there's a lot of metrics you want to hit when you control sort of the traffic around the city, but safety is Number one?
Number one with a
Yeah.
bullet. Safety trumps operations
Okay.
all day, every day.
So in that vein, what sort of improvements have we done recently, and what things can we expect to happen, say, 2021?
So I'm going to touch on a few signal timing things that we've done since I've been here. One of them is by the interchange. So US2, we coordinated 20th Avenue down to 37th Avenue last fall. Kind of what you were seeing before is really high queuing or stacking between 20th Avenue and what we call 22nd Avenue, or the North Interchange ramp, because they were operating individually. So that works on a small scale. Doesn't work if you actually want to move cars through. So we retimed that corridor, and ever since then, when I drive through it, I've noticed that queuing is minimal in that area, and you oftentimes, if you hit one, you're gonna hit the other, which is great. And then the other big one that we've done is Burdick and Broadway. We adjusted the east-west left turn phasing at that intersection. Before, what was happening is typically what you see is the lefts go first and then the throughs go. Well, for going westbound, leaving downtown, both of those volumes were so high that they were actually kind of suffocating. They're switching around, suffocating each other. Left turns will back up. Well, then the through movement couldn't go, and then vice versa. So what we did is we just made that whole approach vacate at one time. And I've really noticed the queuing has gone down with that. And the intersection clears. It operates, to me, so much better that way. So we're going to kind of keep that with this new signal timing program that we got going on. But we're hoping to also, once Broadway gets reconstructed downtown, we can tie that clearing out with hitting Main Street and 3rd Street as well.
Quite a lift for you and your team to try to coordinate that over what will be several years, I imagine. So,
yep, for sure.
Finally, sort of real quickly, 2-part question. What is your least favorite intersection and why? And what intersection do you probably get the most complaints about?
Oh, the least one, man, I don't want to touch on it again, but it's probably that Burdick and Broadway.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a bear, right?
It's a bear. So I'm going through this big model, it's the cross of two main roads. And in my world, Broadway carries so much traffic on that roadway compared to Burdick, which is saying something. But I have to dedicate so much time to Burdick because it's got those it's not minor street, but minor street protected left turn phases that kind of dictate. I have to run so much time for Burdick. I can't give as much time as I need to Broadway. So that one's the hardest one. For me as a professional and trying to improve that intersection, there's other intersections in town that some of these 4-lane roads that aren't always the most fun to drive on. You get a lot of left turning volume in with those. And what was the second part of that question, Derek?
What maybe intersection or what traffic control aspect do you get the most complaints about across the city?
So maybe not intersection per se. I get a lot of questions, complaints, you could say, about left turn phasing throughout town, or more so lack of left turn phasing. That's something that it's in the works. Nothing ever goes as fast as we want to. We get questions about West Burdick and 16th Street, left turn phasing there, some other ones along 16th Street. We'll say we will have by Minot High, West Burdick and 16th. With those signal improvements, we are putting in left turn phasing there. Not going to operate it every direction all the time, but at least we'll have that southbound left in the morning. That's a big one that I personally drive every day that I see it like this needs to be here. We're going to put it in. and then we'll use it, and we're kind of doing that same improvement all throughout town when we do these improvements as well.
All right. So you're telling me there's no magic wand to just solve all of our traffic woes across the city?
If there was an endless amount of money, a lot, but we're doing the best we can. We're doing, I would say, the most we can with what we have.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, you make friends on one intersection and you'll make enemies at the exact same intersection with the same action. I see that quite often. All right, that's Stefan Jers, our traffic engineer. Dare I say traffic artist? Right now.
I like that term. I should put that on my business card.
Our traffic artist, Stefan Jers. Thanks for joining me this morning. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you very much.
It's officially spring as of yesterday, and while we could still see that spring blizzard anytime, hopefully not, we're taking advantage of the weather that we have now and cleaning up the streets, figuratively and literally. Our street sweepers are out now, but they won't be on a regular schedule to residential areas for probably another couple weeks. The focus at the moment are on those snow routes and hills, the higher traffic areas and places where there's generally a little bit more issues with that sand collecting on the side or in our catch basins. Once those are all cleared up, you can expect regular visits near your homes if you aren't in those aforementioned areas already. Our state is still progressing wonderfully, might I add, in the vaccination effort to help end the pandemic. More than 26% of North Dakotans have been given at least one dose of the vaccine for COVID-19, 22% for Ward County. If you haven't yet, you can still sign up for an appointment to get your vaccine if you have a pulse and a paycheck. They're taking appointments now at First District. You can do that all online at fdhu.org. Meanwhile, we're continuing the rapid testing program at Fire Station 1 throughout the rest of the month, at least for April, or until April. A quick drive-through testing that happens on Monday from 8 to 2, on Thursday 2 to 7, and then again on Saturday 10 to 2, 3 days a week, trying to hit every sort of time frame to be as convenient and accessible to you as we can. Testing is available to the general public. You will need to pre-register. Well, you should pre-register if you want a quick visit. You can do that by visiting testreg.nd.gov. All right, thanks for joining me on This Week Ahead. If you have any specific questions for us to cover, we want to hear those. Send us those questions at any time. We have a few in the queue right now that I plan to get to next week. Meanwhile, you can give us more. Do that by visiting us online at minetnd.org/mailbag, or you can email us, info@minetnd.org. Just use the subject header of mailbag. Also, I have to ask for a solid quickly. We want to know how you prefer to hear about your city information, your news, and the feature stories about your local government. We want to make sure that we're getting the information to you in the best way for you. We do that with just a quick 10-question survey. If you can go ahead and take that for me. That's live now. You can find it at minetnd.org/minotpio. We're trying to make sure that we're putting enough eggs in the correct basket, so to speak. It'd be great if you let us know if we're on the right path. Again, www.minetnd.org/minotpio. Of course, follow us on social media for everything that you need to see, hear, and learn about your city government as well. We're at City of Minot on all of your favorite platforms. And of course, get our bi-weekly newsletter, different from this one, by signing up for that at minetnd.org/the-latest. And if you don't mind, if you're listening to the audio version of this as a podcast, download and rate the podcast. You can subscribe to this as a podcast by going to minetnd.org/podcast. That'll do it for me today, and I hope you enjoy This Week Ahead.